In his book, The Making of Humanity, Rob Briffaut states, quote, "It is highly probable that but for the Arabs," this is a big mistake when you use the term Arabs. A lot of writers use the term Arabs, but they mean by that actually Muslims. And this is the common misconception a lot of people have, that Muslim means Arab. The Arabs are a small minority, less than 20% of the Muslim world population. The largest Muslim country in the world is not an Arab country, Indonesia, with nearly 165 to maybe 170 million Muslim. The Muslim minority in India is twice as large as the largest Arab Muslim country, which is Egypt. These are facts that a lot of people in the media perhaps are not aware of, and the same stereotype of Muslim means Arab. So the same problem with Briffaut anyway. But he continues to say, had it not been for that, modern European civilization would have never risen at all. Later he says, there is no aspect of European growth in which decisive influence of Islamic culture is not traceable. What we call science today, he says, excuse me, arose in Europe as a result of a new spirit of inquiry, a new method of investigation, the method of experimentation, observation, measurement, of the development of mathematics in forms unknown to the Greeks. That spirit and those methods were introduced in the European world by, he used the term Arabs again, meaning Muslims. I may add to this that new spirit that Briffaut speaks about was actually sparked by no less than the Qur'an and the teaching of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The first word revealed in the Qur'an, not sentence, word, iqra, which means read or recite, paradoxically revealed to a person who was himself unlettered. It also teaches that those who are endowed with knowledge are better in the sight of God if they combine knowledge with faith. Ingredients of what we call today the scientific approach are found in the Qur'an, as it urges the use of reason. It demands evidence. It urges mankind to explore the natural phenomena and to wisely utilize natural resources for its benefit as the trustee of God on this earth. The understanding and implementation of that new spirit gave rise to a thriving civilization whose golden age lasted for 5 centuries, from the 8th century to the fall of Baghdad in 1258, 13th century, and for 2 more centuries, a total of 7, in Muslim Spain until the fall of Grenada in the late part of the 15th century. Following are few examples of Muslim contribution to civilization in this period. Muslim astronomers were able to draw maps of visible stars, correct the sun and moon tables, and were actually the first to use the pendulum to measure time and the first to build observatories in the east and west. They predicted sunspots, eclipses, and the appearance of comets. Early Muslim chemists, as early as the 8th and 9th century of the Common Era, discovered the nitric acid, described the properties of sulfuric acid, and the operations of distillation, sublimation, filtration, coagulation, and crystallization. They applied their knowledge of chemistry in the making of plasters, syrups, ointments, and tempering of steel. Actually, many common terms that we have today in English, such as camphor, elixir, alkali, syrup, and alcohol, all originated from Arabic terms, which was the international language of knowledge, the lingua franca for science and education, in the same way that today, for example, English, French, and German are the language of culture and science. Advancements were made in the manufacturing of fabrics, silk, cotton, wool, leather, glass, steel, drugs, paper, and perfumes. Muslim contribution to mathematics were immense. It included the popularization of what came to be known as the Arabic numerals that started initially in India. And that led to the revolutionizing of mathematics. The preservation of the work of Euclid in geometry is attributed to Muslim mathematicians also, as well as the development of trigonometry in its modern form, including the first to use the sine and cosine. Algebra, in fact, is an Arabic term. Literally, it means to put the broken pieces together. If somebody has a broken arm or something, you go to have algebra on it to put the pieces. This is the basic concept in algebra. The term logarithm came from the name of the famous 9th century Muslim mathematician Muhammad al-Khwarizmi. Logarithm, Khwarizmi. Ibn al-Haytham's, or al-Hazin as known in the West, had a very important piece of work on optics in the 11th century, which was described by George Sarton, one of the foremost historians of science, as the beginning of the modern science of optics, to which now we owe the cameras and TV and all the trappings of our modern life. The work of al-Hazin or Ibn al-Haytham exerted great influence on Western sciences and showed great progress in the experimental method long before Roger Bacon, to whom normally or commonly experimental method or scientific approach is attributed. The making of the compass and its use in navigation is attributed as well to Muslim physicists. As early as the 9th century, the Caliph al-Ma'mun estimated the circumference. Notice here, we talk about the 9th century, and we're using the term circumference of the earth. And he came up with a figure that is amazingly close to the figure we use today using the most sophisticated equipment, 24,000 miles. Muslim geographers, perhaps inspired by references in the Qur'an that the earth is spheric, there are several references in the Qur'an, were able actually to study geography on globes when Europe was still arguing about the earth being flat. Al-Razi, or known as Razis in the West, the chief physician of Baghdad in the 9th century, is regarded as one of the greatest physicians in the Middle Ages by historians of science. According to John Draper, Al-Razi's immense medical encyclopedia remained among the most important medical references in Europe for 600 years. His works on measles and smallpox were translated as late as the 18th century to European languages. Another giant of medicine, who was also a philosopher at the same time, is Ibn Sina, or known in the West also as Avicenna, of the 11th century, who wrote a 5-volume work on medicine, Qanun fi al-Tibb, or Canon in Medicine, which remained as the supreme authority on medicine, the Bible of medicine, for 600 years, and became the basis for medical standards, especially in Italian and French universities. As early as the 11th century, Muslim surgeons treated cataract, hemorrhage, and used cauterization. One of the most interesting things is that oftentimes the discovery of the circulatory system is attributed to William Harvey. And centuries before him, more precisely in the 13th century, a Syrian physician by the name of Ibn Nafis is the one actually who discovered the minor circulatory system. Finally, 3 examples of the influence of Islamic art, architecture, and calligraphy. On the doors of some cathedrals was inscribed the Islamic expression, Ma Sha Allah, which means as God wills. Islamic style mosaic was found in a number of churches in France, in Auvergne. And an Anglo-Saxon golden coin, or coins actually, many coins, some were found in Scandinavia and other places, carried on one side King Offa Rex of Mercia. On the other side was inscribed in Arabic the Muslim testimony of faith, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. I wonder whether King Offa was secretly a Muslim, or whether those who coined it did not realize what they were doing. They just admired the calligraphy of that testimony of faith. An equally interesting matter is related to an Irish cross from the 9th century, which is now found in the British Museum, which is decorated in the middle with the inscription, Bismillah, in the name of Allah. A very curious way of interfaith relations.